On this episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, I'm going to dive in, folks, and look at this Baker Mayfield trade with the Cleveland Browns by the Carolina Panthers. Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Is it just something that in 6 months we'll forget about? Before we get into today's content, make sure you subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. Pound that like button. Hit that bell notification to be notified of future videos like this on the Panthers. And by all means, folks, leave Uncle Chucky some comments. I love the dialogue. All right, folks, it's official. At one point in time, I felt that Baker Mayfield was going to end up in Carolina. And then another part of me said, Atlanta's not really strong on a quarterback. I didn't think they'd go that way because Matt Ryan ousting him, getting rid of him. They were going in a different direction. And there's a couple other teams that felt like it could have used a quarterback of Baker Mayfield's quality. Not that he's a great quarterback, but at least he's an upgrade. But the only team I really saw, other than the Panthers, was probably Seattle. And I think I don't know if Seattle's going to try to mess things up so they can get in the top 3 or 4 to draft next year and get one of these highly acclaimed guys, like C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young. It's hard to say. But they just might be trying to ride it out with not having Russell Wilson and trying to strike gold with one of these other quarterbacks that they've had. But the Panthers, interesting story. Now, I know a lot of people were pissed and upset that Carolina did this. For everything y'all can talk about David Tepper and not caring whatever, this has David Tepper all over it. It's going to create a stir in the fan base. If Baker starts from day one or he looks better than Darnold, fans are going to clamor. And with his loud mouth and his, grit and moxie and want to play, very good. Now, what does this do for Sam Darnold? Now, some people feel Darnold's a little more athletic. And maybe this will ignite Darnold to show, shouldn't have brought him in on the starter. And Darnold does have an upper hand at first. But it's going to be interesting because if Darnold performs well and then this 1-year deal at $18 million done, yeah, we could franchise him, but chances are he's probably going to want to get out of Carolina because he's going to feel disrespected, in my opinion. Now, let's just say Mayfield ends up coming in, winning the starting job, or partway through the season gets it and looks better than Darnold. Who's to say that Mayfield wouldn't get quartered after this year and somebody try to bring him in? My opinion, I think Darnold's, after this year's gone, he's not coming back. The only way he would come back is if he has a less than stellar season, excuse me, and has no other suitors, and we bring him back as a backup at a much cheaper rate. I just don't see his worth here in Carolina unless he really was to blow it up and look really well. And then, like I said, he might entertain other suitors at that point and leave because of how he's kind of been done in Carolina. Mayfield might be different. He might come in here and fall in love with the fans. He's got a cheaper deal, but he might command some more money if he can do good enough and find a home. Now, the one thing I think, Matt Corral, this is great for him because he doesn't have to come in and get the pressure. Because my fear was if Darnold came in and after a few games stunk it up or looked bad or got hurt or got replaced, and we put Corral in and Corral wasn't ready, going to ruin that young man's career. Now, you never know. Corral could look good in camp and we can usher him in sooner than later. But we have the luxury of grooming him, letting him learn behind these two guys. And look, just because these guys aren't ultimate winners doesn't mean Matt Corral cannot learn from both Darnold and Mayfield. And that might be something he learns what not to do. He can look at both these guys competing and take the things that are worst in Baker and say, I'm following Darnold on this. Baker's wrong. Or he can look at some traits Darnold has and says, Sam, he doesn't look good here. Baker does a better job. Let me hone that skill. He could take traits from both of them and says, I can't do either one of those things. Got to get rid of them. Or he might learn a little professionalism from both of them and decide, I've got to go this route and look better for my career. Now, the one thing I think is safe to say, I think it's time that we don't need to carry 4 quarterbacks. And for you P.J. Walker fans, I think it's time to say goodbye. I have nothing against P.J. Walker, but I really don't think he's NFL quality material. Backup at best. But everybody talks about he's been 3-0 as a starter. Some of that just happened to be getting in the game when he did. He started in one game Cam did last year when Cam threw a touchdown and ran for one, and he ended up starting when Cam came in. Okay, so he got the win. But my point is, it's time to let P.J. Walker go. Now, in all this, with the new offensive line and it getting better, and let's hope our receivers. I mean, the Shi Smith thing kind of messed us up a little bit, maybe, but we'll see what happens. But Terrace Marshall Jr. should be better. We'll see what Robbie Anderson does. A healthy Christian McCaffrey, having DJ Moore. If, and guys like Tommy Tremble, if our offense can gel a little bit. The only concern I got, really, I think our secondary will be good. We do need some depth on the defensive line because of losing Hassan Reddick. We can see what happens. But my opinion, it's still that linebacker position. It's something that hasn't been addressed. And keep your eye open when we get into training camp and we have those 3 preseason games. If a linebacker-rich team ends up making a cut or two, we might be able to find someone. It's just really, I think our biggest problem in Carolina, we were spoiled from Sam Mills to Thomas Davis to John Beeson to Luke Kuechly. We've been spoiled with having great linebackers. Dan Morgan, I don't want to forget anybody. But with this trade, I think it's a can't lose situation. $5 million on a quarterback who was a number 1 overall pick a few years ago, who has been a starter in this league, who in my opinion can do no worse than Darnold. In fact, if I had to look at them side by side, now I have had people and I've had calls to make me think maybe Darnold's a better quarterback. But it's going to be nice to have the luxury of them going into training camp, see which one does better. Maybe both of them have a chance to get played. I do know this. If at the end of the year, if Matt Corral's playing and he's struggling, then we failed this year because that means all 3 quarterbacks didn't do well or we ended up having some injuries at the quarterback position. I would love for one of these two, whether it be Darnold or Mayfield, to go in, play the whole year and do well, or if one doesn't do well, the other comes in and takes off and does better. That would be the best case scenario for this team. So, what do you folks think? Do you think the Baker Mayfield signing was a good idea? Do you think it was a bad idea? Do you think this is the end for Sam Darnold? Do you think we'll get rid of both of them when the season ends? Leave me some comments. I love the dialogue. Pound that like button. Hit that bell to notification to be notified of future videos like this on the Panthers. And by all means, folks, subscribe. It's free. I will see you next time on another episode of Sports Guy.